Welcome to the TimeShare Legal Action.
Hi, everyone. This is TimeShare Legal Action, and I am Mitchell Sussman, founder emeritus of the law firm of Sussman and Associates with 5 offices in 2 states. And without going into a long explanation as to my history, let's have a little fun here. And we'll use AI, and you can go to Gemini and ask Gemini this question. What attorney is the godfather of timeshare legal exit? And our dear friends at Gemini will spit out more stuff about me than I even know myself. And with that, I want to introduce someone who I've known for many, many years, a dear friend, and truly one of the leaders of timeshare exit in the United States and the world, Panda Kroll.
Thanks, Mitch. Yes, I introduce you to everyone as the godfather of timeshare. Who was the first person to do that? Was it me?
I think it might have been.
Yes. So my background is a little different than Mitch's, but we are complementary, which is why it's good to have the two of us. But my background is I don't represent timeshare owners. I represent attorneys and companies, which you will hear a lot about, called exit companies, who represent owners. And I represent them in their pursuit for justice.
Well, Panda and I met, what was it, 2007 or thereabouts, when she was representing one of these first timeshare, we'll call them exit companies, but they were actually, as I recall, they were like a trade company. You trade in your timeshare, and then in return you got points. And golly, that was like almost 20 years ago, wasn't it, Panda?
Around 2012, I worked with a company that actually worked with your dear brother.
That's right.
And that's where I first heard the name Sussman. So this is nearly, quite a many years ago. And in 2012, this was after the 2008 mortgage crisis. And so some developers, not to get too granular already, but my history was that I was working with a very large company called TimeShare Relief. TimeShare Relief was what nowadays everybody says timeshare exit, and exit is a word you see in a lot of the names of exit companies. Back then, everything was relief. So go figure. But TimeShare Relief was the brand leader, and they did a lot of advertising with a lot of help from your brother. And they also did a lot of helped clients take willing assignors, people who wanted to get rid of their timeshare, assign it to anybody who would take it, and they would find like a matchmaking service almost. And those were all paid in full, typically deeded properties. And if I can boast, I made a name for myself because rather than wait to be sued, as so many of my clients now get sued for their trouble for trying to help owners, is we struck first. And this client, TimeShare Relief, sued one of the big developers to say, if people want to get out of their timeshare and they found a willing buyer, assignor, purchaser, what have you, then you must let that transaction go through. And we sued them for some of the things they sue us now for, or my clients for now, like tortious interference, unfair practices. And so I made a name for myself. And I think that's where you might have heard of me, because we brought a lawsuit against the developer for a declaratory judgment saying you can't do that.
Well, let me give you even, there was a company that I think you were representing in Southern California back in, what was it, 2007 and 2008, when my brother, who was not a timeshare salesman, but what he was was that he would set appointments for people to go to timeshare presentations, and he represented every single major timeshare back in the day and would make money by sending people to timeshare appointments. And if they closed the deal, then he would make a commission. And when the mortgage crisis hit in 2007 and 2008, um, I was sitting on the beach with him in Newport Beach, and he was saying, "Oh my God, nobody wants to buy timeshares right now. They can't hold on to their homes. Everybody wants to get out." And he told me this story, and I said to him, Robert, that could be a business all by itself. And he proceeded to send me a bunch of these contracts, these timeshare contracts, and I looked at them and I found a way that we could deal with the timeshares. And that basically created the industry of actually what a gentleman by the name of Brandon Reed coined the exit industry. Because before that, there was no such thing as exits or cancellations. There was simply trying to resell, which is going to be the subject of our conversation today about the resale market. But before we do that, I know that Panda has a couple of stories that she might be telling us about the timeshare exit team and Brandon, who, again, another piece of litigation that Panda and I were both mutually involved with. Panda, do you want to? I'm sure you have a couple of great stories to tell about that.
Sure, Mitch. So timeshare exit team picked up where timeshare relief left off because timeshare relief back in the post-mortgage crisis days didn't want to touch customers who wanted to get out of timeshares who had mortgages. They left that for some other entities. So timeshare exit team was able to, with an attorney model, they were able to help, I guess, like 50,000 people get out of their timeshare. And for their trouble, basically, I always tell my clients it's a badge of honor to be sued by the developers, because if you're not making a dent, if you're not getting a lot of people out of their timeshare, then they'll leave you alone. But at some point, partly because they don't like the advertising, right? On radio and on Facebook and on social networks. Um, and also because they start they realize that people are getting out of their timeshare and they don't want anybody to be able to get out. Nobody leaves this room alive, right? And so they would sue. And I would talk to insurance companies who would be saying, this is a joke, right? The insurance companies would literally say, how in the world can they sue for people leaving who don't want to be there? And my response was, well, I guess the developer's position is these are our victims. You can't take money from them, only we can. So when my client came to me, they had been sued by 3 developers, and they had been told Pam Nicole is the timeshare whisperer or whatever. She's the one who has, taken the developer on by the horns in the past, and they wanted to countersue, and they had insurance. And so the insurance companies, they had good insurance, really good insurance, right? And the insurance was, oh gosh, like $5 million, and there was umbrella policies, right? And they said, we have insurance lawyers. So we're not sure why we're calling you. We keep hearing your name over and over. So we're asking, what can you do for us that we're not already getting? And I said, well, you just told me you wanted to countersue. So an insurance company typically, very, very rarely, will take that on because their job is to defend, right? That's what your policy, your premium is paid for. Your coverage is to defend you. And I said, but number 2, how do you know that these insurance companies are really going to be up to the challenge with their panel attorneys? They may be great, but they might want some institutional knowledge about this area of practice. And number 3, You've got cases in this case, they were sued by, we're not saying names, are we? But
No.
they were sued in, they were sued in Nevada, they were sued in California, and they were sued in Florida. And I said, so you've got all these different lawyers. I said, I think you need someone to coordinate them. Number four, I said, they will, I said, you need in California at least, this is unique to California. I'm not sure if other states have this. We have a rule, which is if there's a conflict uh, where your insurance, remember, your insurance attorney has a dual relationship. They work for they work for the insurance company. They're paid by the insurance company, but their job is they have fiduciary duty. They have a professional obligation to represent the client. But if that ever comes into conflict, which it could, then you need in California, you're required to hire an independent. The insurance company has to pay for an independent attorney who can make sure that these conflicts are smoothed over so that the insurance lawyer does not have a dual relationship that's adverse to the client.
Well, Panda, let's talk about something that and I know that a lot of timeshare owners are told during the course of the timeshare presentation about the resale market. And by that, I mean whatever timeshare developer you're talking to, frequently they like to say, well, you own your timeshare and then you can sell your timeshare. I know in many states, the AG or the Department of Real Estate says you're not allowed to call it an investment, but they still nonetheless say that, well, when you have your timeshare, if you buy it from us, you could resell it at a profit. And I'd like to hear your thoughts and comments on that.
Well, certainly when somebody's trying to decide whether to buy a car, whether to buy a house, any purchase really that's significant, you're going to want to know if I at some point want to trade up or, get rid of it, is there a secondary market? And so my thoughts on that, Mitch, and I think you know much more about this than I do, but my thoughts on that is the secondary market in timeshare is not like the secondary market for housing, for real estate, is not like the secondary market for cars, and that it is what economists call, and I'll turn it back over to you, but economists call the secondary market for timeshare a disorderly time market. So go ahead.
If someone comes to our firm and asks us, well, we'd like to get rid of our timeshare obligation. We'd like to exit that obligation. That's how the word came in there. Um, but we want to try and get some money out of it. And so the first thing that I do is, and our whole team, is that we direct them to eBay. And I don't know if anybody has ever looked on eBay, and I strongly recommend that they do, but you will find literally thousands and thousands of timeshares that are available for literally $1. Alternatively, there are some timeshares that are supposedly for sale, but they're for sale and you can receive money because the owners of those timeshares are so desperate to escape the ongoing financial obligations that the owner will pay perhaps the first year or more of your maintenance fees so that it's a means for them to exit or escape the financial obligations. And just a quick look at eBay by anyone who is watching or listening to this will confirm exactly what I'm saying. Now, there are some timeshares that do have some value. And again, without naming developers, when you go to eBay, you will be able to find them. Panda, have you had any experience with the timeshare user group or Red Week?
Thanks, Mitch. Yes, I introduced you to everyone as the godfather of timeshare. Who was the first person to do that? Was it me? When you spoke at hmm? Right. So once a yes. So my background is a little different than Mitch's, but we are complementary, which is why it's good to have the two of us. But my background is um, I don't represent timeshare owners. I represent attorneys and
I can't say that I disagree with you, and that's why, if we get a consumer and they come to the law firm and they say, "We want to sell. We want to try and realize some kind of profit from our timeshare ownership." I do direct them to all of these places, and they themselves will learn that essentially there is not a really vibrant resale market. As a matter of fact, there isn't much of a resale market at all. Um, the other thing that I think we need to talk about, because unfortunately I get to see this a lot, is that there are some resale scams out there, and I will call them scams um, because they are, and I won't mention names. But these scams purport to resell your timeshare at a substantial profit for you. And some have said that they're related to Mexican cartels, criminals, whatever. But the way that works is simply this: if you own a timeshare and you want to sell, and again, I understand the philosophy of wanting to sell to get something from the money that you've spent, um, you get approached by someone and they say, "Wow, the timeshare that you bought for 50,000 is now worth 150,000." Well, a simple visit to eBay, Tug, or Red Week will prove that that's not true. But where the scam comes in is that the person who contacts you and says, "We want to resell your timeshare for 100,000 or $50,000 profit." What they then say is, "Well, we have a buyer. They want to buy it for a big number, but you need to put money into escrow to handle whatever the fees are to transfer it, or a deposit or something like that." Um, and it's very simple when you get approached by that type of individual or company who promises that they have a buyer. um, I will give the analogy of, have you ever sold a house before? If you're the seller of a house, the seller of the house does not put the money in escrow. The buyer puts the money in escrow. So if someone is asking you to sell your timeshare, promising big returns, and then says, "Well, but in order to do this, you have to put 50,000 in escrow or 20,000." And sometimes they do it in sequence. In other words, they'll start with, "Send us 10,000, we have a buyer." The next sequence is, "Oh, we need another 20,000, you need to send it to our escrow company." The bottom line is, and if you haven't had experience selling a home, then have you ever sold a car? When you sell a car, the seller doesn't pay to have the car sold. The seller receives money. A seller always receives money. So if you are approached by some company purporting to have a buyer for your timeshare, and that particular company or individual says, "In order for me to secure this buyer, you, the seller, must put money into escrow," get as far away from that as you possibly can, because when sellers sell things, they receive money. They don't pay money to sell something that has value. Well, Have you had that experience, Panda? What are your thoughts as it relates to that? Can you help the people out and tell them, what your experience is and how it's worked out? Yes. I think that's excellent, excellent advice. So, do you want to talk a little bit about those brokers that asked for money to list the timeshares?
I turned my mic on and then I started it from the beginning. Should I start over? Okay, thank you. Sure, Mitch. So timeshare exit team picked up where timeshare relief left off because timeshare relief back in the mortgage post mortgage crisis days didn't want to touch customers who wanted to get out of timeshares who had mortgages. They left that for some other entities. So timeshare exit team was able to, with an attorney model, they were able to help. I guess like
I think that those of the ones that we've mentioned, I think that Tug and Redweek are probably the most credible, although you can sell your timeshare on eBay. But again, you're competing with a lot of people who are just willing to get rid of it for a dollar or even pay to get rid of it. So if that's the model that exists, that should tell you everything that you need about the resale market as it relates to timeshares.
right, and so they would sue, and I would talk to insurance companies who would be saying, "This is a joke, right?
I am, and why don't you take it?
Can they sue for people leaving who don't want to be there?" And my response was, "Well, I guess the developer's position is these are our victims. You can't take money from them, only we can." So basically, when the my client came to me, I'm not sure if you want this much history, but it's what's we have an hour to fill, I guess. So when my client came to me, they had been sued by 3 developers, and they had been told Pam Nicole is the timeshare whisperer or whatever. She's the one who has, you know, taken the developer on by the horns in the past, and they wanted to countersue, and they had insurance. And so the insurance companies, they had good insurance, really good insurance, right? And the insurance was, uh, oh gosh, like $5 million.
That's it for this episode of Timeshare Legal Action. And if you want to learn more about your options or to take a closer look at the timeshare cancellation work that we actually do, I invite you to go to our website, timesharelegalaction.com. And thank you again for watching this podcast. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.